Good afternoon. This is Stephanie Lianos. I'm a senior business consultant with Uninet, and today we're going to talk about the cost pool conundrum. The objective of a cost pool is to associate indirect costs with direct costs so that we can calculate the total overall cost of a project. And why is calculating the total cost important? So that we can manage our projects. So you can see here in our JSR that we do have our direct labor as well as our ODCs. But to see the overall cost of a project, having that fringe overhead and G&A allocated to this project lets us see the overall cost. So you do need those overhead and fringe G&A expenses in order to run your company and to run this, manage these employees. So you actually do get a true picture of what your revenue is. In Uninet, we have project cost accounting set up, and so they all play together. So in order to set up cost pools, we need to have our accounts and org set up as well as our cost elements. For our cost structures, also require our cost elements and our cost pool groups to be set up. And then our cost reports need our cost structures to be set up as well. So we will walk through each of those steps in our demo after my slides. So cost pools are typically 3 buckets. You may have more than this, but in general, you will have your fringe, overhead, and G&A. Fringe costs for a company typically consist of employer taxes, 401k, and other employee benefits, whereas your overhead is typically consisted of costs that are related to direct projects, but not necessarily a single project. So if you did not have those direct projects, you likely would not have overhead. But you would still need G&A to run your business, accounting, professional services, and office supplies. In Uninet, the way cost pools work, we are going to take our fringe and our numerator and all of our labor and our denominator, and you will allocate all the fringe costs over all the labor accounts that you have, and that would include unallowable labor if you have it. Uninet is also equipped to handle service center allocations, so you can have an intermediate cost pool that would, for example, take your facilities and allocate it to overhead and G&A based on either a percentage or actual cost, or any of, there's a few various ways that we'll look at in the system that you could allocate that to your overhead and G&A. How do we group these costs together? In Uninet, we use accounts. This makes setting up your cost pools a lot easier. As long as you provide this cost pool parent in your admin setup account setup, you don't have to go into your cost pools and update it every time you add a GL account. As long as you have it rolling up to the appropriate cost pool parent, it'll take care of itself. You can also run a reference report that will show you how the cost pool hierarchy is set up and how it flows. More information about our cost pools, I'll mention this again at the end of the presentation, but you can visit our Knowledge Center, YouTube, as well as contact your CSM. They're always happy to help. So in our demo system here, I'm going to take a little bit of time to look at some of the setup prior to getting to your cost pool groups, because there is some things that need to be set up prior to them. So under admin setup in this accounting section, you have your cost elements, cost pool groups, cost reports, and cost structures. So it's all right here as well as your accounts, right? So first, if we look at our accounts, for example, here we'll go to a fringe account. Here's our cost pool parent that is set up. So as long as I have my cost pool parent set up correctly, it's going to roll up to 60 and it will be included in the numerator. And again, if I run a reference report, so that's reports, reference, account tree views, I can run this on my cost pool hierarchy and see under 60, here are these, everything is rolling up to this fringe expenses. So as long as in my fringe pool, I put 60 as my denominator, anything falling under 60 will roll up to that. And for our cost elements, you'll have your labor cost elements, you'll have your ODCs, and then your indirect cost elements. And so this is a Keystone system. So in our Keystone, we have Two our fringe client and company site, overhead client and company site, and our G&A indirect cost pools set up, our cost elements. These then can roll into our cost structures in our cost pool. So in our cost structure, we'll have our labor cost elements, our ODC cost elements, as well as our indirect costs. These indirect cost elements, this tab here within our cost structure applies to how our cost reports as well as your cost plus invoices are calculated. So for example, fringe client side is going to take our labor client site times our fringe rate. Overhead client site is going to take our labor client site plus the fringe and multiply it by our overhead client site rate. Our rates are stored on our indirect cost rates tab. You can have a target, provisional, and actual rate. Your actual rates can be set up to automatically update as soon as you post your cost pools each month. So that's really nice so that you can, run your reports on your actual rates if you need to as soon as you post your cost pools. Cost reports quickly is more, you do have all of your cost elements that can apply here as your choices when you're setting up your actuals formula for your cost reports. All right, and then our cost pool groups. So our cost pool groups, again, this is Keystone. We have our fringe client and company site. We actually do have a facility service center, that intermediate calculation we talked about, overhead, company and client site, as well as our G&A pool. So if I go into my fringe client site, just walking through some of the setup, anything with an asterisk is a required field. We give our cost pool a name. The cost pool period can be either year-to-date or month-to-date calculation. And our base calculation method is, in this case, going to use our actual amounts. So it's going to use our actual amounts for each of our labors. But for those intermediate pool calculations, like I said, you could use a fixed amount, hours, or percentage. In this case, I'm posting my fringe to my GL, which means I'm going to, at the end of each month, I would have a 0 fringe on my financial statements, and it would then allocate all my fringe costs to these various post accounts. This post rate to cost structure, when we looked at that indirect cost rates tab, this is just letting Uninet know when I do post, I do want it to update that fringe client site actuals rate within my cost structure. For the numerator, the pool here, so fringe expenses, like I was showing in the cost or the account setup in the account tree view, as long as everything rolls up to 60, all fringe expenses will be included here. And then I have all my labor in the base. The facilities service center, you see I'm taking my facilities chart expenses, and then I'm allocating it to based on percentage, 90% and 10% to overhead and G&A respectively. For overhead, I have my overhead costs in my numerator, and then in my denominator, I have my direct BMP and IRAD labor and fringe on that labor. And in our G&A, we have G&A, BMP, and IRAD in our numerator, and all direct costs in our denominator. All right, so when I go to calculate my cost pools, so financials, general ledger, cost pool calculation, let's see here. I calculate my cost pool. I have a magnifying glass here. I can take a look at what calculated. I can see basically all the setup that I did in admin setup is summarized here. I can see what I'm posting to my GL, what rates I'm updating, and then I can actually see the total pool and the total base and the rate that was calculated. I can further drill down in the screen to see the actual amounts that make up my pool. Anything below I can click through and see. to make sure that that actually should have been something that should have been included. And then again, here's my base, same thing, and I can see the amount of fringe that's being allocated to each of my labor accounts. Okay, back to my cost pool calculation. I can use this sheet of paper here. This actually takes me straight to my statement of indirects. So using my statement of indirects, I can see all my accounts here. My year-to-date amounts will be listed here. Each of my cost pools. And what's great is I can, again, anything in blue I can drill into and see more detail. But I can also follow this amount through each of my cost pool groups. So I can see direct labor is in the base of my fringe and base of my overhead, as well as in the base of my G&A, just to make sure it was included everywhere it should have been. At the bottom of this report will show me my total pool, my total base, as well as the percentage calculated. Something very helpful and useful is to look in this not used column in the far right. If you happen to add new accounts periodically, or just to make sure everything was included that should have been, the only thing really in this not used column should be anything unallowable. So if I scroll to the bottom here, I can see there is a $300 charge, and it's to unallowable travel. So that's okay that it wasn't included in a cost pool. But since everything's included, everything looks good, I could then check my box in post, and it would update my rates and my cost structure. Again, if y'all have any other further questions, please do reach out to your CSM or look on YouTube in our Knowledge Center. Thank you.